I wasn't supposed to find out like this. Not from a photo online, and definitely not on the same night my girlfriend's birthday party was happening without me. I smiled at her. I helped plan everything. I even bought the cake. But I didn't know. I wasn't actually invited. I was 27. She was 26. We had been together for 3 years. The relationship looked steady from the outside. Same circle of friends. Shared weekends in the same apartment. Inside jokes that surfaced at every gathering. Holiday plans already pinned on the fridge for next December. It felt solid enough. Her birthday was 2 weeks away. She said she wanted it simple this year. Just friends, a few drinks. Nothing elaborate. I nodded and started handling the details because that was how we did things. I knew every name on the guest list. I booked the venue, a quiet bar downtown with dim lighting and decent cocktails. I arranged the food, confirmed head count, even picked up extra bottles she liked. At 8:15 on the morning of the party, I sent her a message confirming the final numbers. She replied with a short thanks. Nothing more. By 19:40, the place was filling up. I arrived early to check the setup. Balloons in the corner, her favorite playlist already running low in the background. A table reserved near the back. Friends trickled in one by one. Everyone greeted me like usual. Handshakes, quick hugs, comments about how well organized everything looked. She walked in at 20:25 wearing the black dress I had seen her try on 3 times in the store. She smiled at the group. She smiled at me last. Then she moved through the room, talking to each person, laughing at jokes I couldn't quite hear from where I stood. I stayed near the bar, refilling drinks, making sure the food stayed stocked. At 21:10, I noticed her phone kept lighting up on the table. She would glance at it, type quickly, then slip it back into her bag. The messages kept coming every few minutes. By 22:30, the energy in the room had shifted. Small clusters formed. Conversations grew louder. She spent more time on the far side of the bar than near me. I watched her lean in to listen to one of our mutual friends, then laugh in that way she only did when something genuinely amused her. At 23:15, I stepped outside for air. The street was quiet. When I came back in, 2 new faces had appeared. People I didn't recognize. She introduced them casually to the group, but never brought them over to me. One of them, a tall guy in a dark jacket, stayed close to her for the rest of the night. I kept moving through the party, clearing empty glasses, checking the time. 23:40. The music changed to something slower. She didn't come find me. At 05, someone turned the lights down further. I stood by the wall and watched her. She was smiling again, but not at the room. Her eyes kept drifting toward the entrance like she was waiting for one more person. The cake arrived at 0:30. Everyone gathered. She blew out the candles in one breath. The group cheered. I clapped from the edge. After that, the night blurred. More drinks, more laughter, more glances at phones. By 1:20, most people had started leaving. She hugged them goodbye one by one. When the last familiar face walked out, she turned back toward the bar. The 2 strangers were still there. I began collecting our things. She didn't move to help. At 1:45, the bar staff started closing up. I looked across the room and saw her standing near the exit, talking quietly with the tall guy in the dark jacket. Their heads were close. Her hand rested lightly on his arm for a second before dropping. I waited by the table. She finally walked over at 1:55, coat already on. She said nothing about the strangers. Nothing about the extra guests. Nothing about the way the night had unfolded. We left the bar together at 2:05. The streets were empty and cold. I carried the leftover bag in one hand. She walked half a step ahead, checking her phone again under the streetlights. Something had changed between the planning and the party itself. I just hadn't seen the exact moment it happened. Yet, it started small. Messages in the group chat took longer to get replies. Hours instead of minutes. I sent a note at 9:30 asking if everyone was still free for Saturday setup. The responses came back eventually, short and flat. One of my closest friends answered at 14:15 with a single line that felt copied from somewhere else. Inside jokes began appearing without explanation. References I didn't catch. Laughs that died the moment I looked over. I kept scrolling through old threads at night, trying to find where I had missed the turn. She changed too. At 19:45, she would sit on the couch beside me. legs tucked under her, eyes fixed on her phone. Small smiles flickered across her face at messages she never tilted toward me. When I glanced over, she would close the screen without comment and reach for the remote instead. No one asked me for party details anymore. The venue confirmation, the cake order, the guest count. Everything I had arranged weeks earlier simply stopped being discussed. I checked the shared list at 22:10 one evening. Half the names had been removed without notice. Then came the night that cracked it open. At 23:40, I walked into the bedroom while she was in the shower. Her phone lay face up on the nightstand, screen still lit from a fresh voice note. I didn't touch it. I only stood there as the audio played on speaker for 3 seconds before cutting off. The voice, one of the girls from our group, said something about a reveal at the party. Reveal. I stayed frozen by the bed until the water in the bathroom stopped. She stepped out wrapped in a towel, hair dripping. She picked up the phone, locked the screen, and gave me the same calm smile she always did. The rest of the night passed in silence between us. I lay on my side of the bed staring at the ceiling. She scrolled quietly until 1:20, then turned off her light. The word kept repeating in my head. Reveal. I still didn't know what it meant. But the small things were no longer small. They were lining up now, one after another, pointing toward something I couldn't yet see. And whatever it was scheduled for her birthday in 6 days. It started with small exclusions. The next few days blurred into a quiet withdrawal. I suggested playlist changes at 10:21 morning. No one replied. I followed up about timing later that afternoon. The answers came back vague and final, as if the decisions had already moved elsewhere. When I tried confirming arrivals the following evening, another friend simply wrote that it had been handled. Every attempt I made was met with the same soft redirection. I stopped pushing after the third time. At 19:55 on the night of the party, I sat on the couch, scrolling through my feed to kill time. The photos loaded without warning. I recognized the venue immediately. The same string lights I had helped hang. The exact table layout I had spent an hour arranging. The decorations were all in place. But the images were wrong. She stood in the center of the first photo, smiling wide, hand wrapped tightly around someone else's. The tall guy from the bar in the dark jacket. They looked comfortable, familiar. The caption underneath read, "Finally official." I kept scrolling. More photos. Same night. Same setup. Not a single frame included me. The date stamp said tonight. 2012. My phone buzzed at 2025. A message from her. She was running late getting ready. She told me not to wait at the entrance. Entrance. I stared at the screen. Another message arrived 30 seconds later from one of the guys in the group. It said to stick to the plan. It would make sense tonight. I remained seated on the couch until 20:45. The apartment felt too still. I stood up, walked to the window, then back to the phone. The photos were still there, fresh comments appearing underneath them in real time. They had used the venue I booked, the lights I chose, the night I had spent weeks organizing. But the event unfolding in those pictures had nothing to do with the birthday I thought I was throwing. I looked at the clock again. 21:05. Whatever the real plan was, it was already in motion without me. And every detail they had let me arrange was now framing a moment I was never meant to see. The only question left was what exactly they were revealing. I did what anyone would do when the pieces no longer fit. At 21:17, I sat back down at the kitchen table and started digging. I went through every message thread from the past 3 weeks. Old group chats, deleted notifications, screenshots I had saved without thinking. My fingers moved fast across the screen. Then I found it. A second group chat. One I had never been added to. The names were all familiar. Every close friend we shared. Her inner circle. I wasn't listed anywhere. I opened the history and scrolled upward in silence. The messages went back weeks. They spoke about the birthday reveal. But it was never about the birthday. It was about making the new relationship public. The same tall guy from the photos. They had chosen the exact night I had helped organize. They had used the venue I booked, the lights I set up, the time slot I confirmed. While I was ordering the food at 14:30 2 weeks earlier, they were deciding the order of the announcement. While I was sending final head counts, they were discussing how to handle my presence. One message sat alone at 23:40 on a Tuesday night. Make sure he still thinks he's helping. It'll be less messy this way. He was me. I kept reading. They had timed everything around my movements. The soft dismissals when I asked questions. The delayed replies. The way she smiled at her phone while sitting next to me on the couch. Every small shift I had noticed had been deliberate. They needed the party to look normal from the outside. They needed me to finish the setup so the stage would be perfect for her new beginning. I closed the chat at 22:05. The apartment was completely quiet. My phone screen went dark in my hand. I had spent weeks building something I was never invited to attend. I had coordinated the lights, the music, the tables, all so they could watch her walk in holding someone else's hand and call it a celebration. The only thing left unclear was how far the rest of the group had known, and what else they had kept from me while I was still smiling and confirming details like nothing was wrong. I didn't confront her immediately. I sat at the kitchen table until 21:40, watching the minutes pass. The phone kept lighting up on the wooden surface. Messages from different numbers. Questions about whether I was coming. Reminders about helping with final setup. Each one landed heavier than the last. I read them all without answering. At 22:05 I stood up, grabbed my jacket, and left the apartment. I walked to the venue early. Not to join the party. I needed to see it for myself. I arrived at 22:35. The decorations I had chosen 2 weeks earlier were already hanging outside the entrance. String lights glowing against the brick wall. The same ones I had tested in the store. I moved closer to the side window. Inside, the lights were dimmed low. Laughter carried through the glass. Clear, loud, unrestrained. Her voice rose above the rest, light and easy in a way I hadn't heard in months. I stepped even closer. She stood near the center of the room. The tall guy had his arm around her waist. The entire friend group surrounded them, glasses raised, faces relaxed and smiling. They were toasting, celebrating something that had clearly already begun. Then someone near the back noticed me standing at the entrance. The laughter didn't stop right away. It simply slowed, then fractured into an awkward pause. Heads turned one by one. She turned last. For the first time that night her expression changed. Not guilt, not regret. Just a quick flash of surprise. Like someone had walked in on a scene still in rehearsal. She held my gaze across the room for 3 full seconds. The group stayed frozen in their positions. Drinks still raised halfway. No one moved toward the door. No one spoke. I remained outside, under the lights I had helped hang, watching the party I had spent weeks organizing continue without me. And in that moment I understood the plan had never been for me to stay until the end. The only question left was how long they had been waiting for me to finally show up. I walked in. Slowly. The door closed behind me with a soft click. The room fell into a thick, sudden silence that swallowed the earlier laughter whole. 20 pairs of eyes turned toward me at once. I stopped just inside the entrance and looked straight at her. She stood frozen under the string lights I had helped install, the tall guy's hand still resting on her lower back. No one moved. No one spoke. The silence stretched. I scanned the faces around her. Every single person I had considered a friend. The same people who had answered my messages about setup times and guest lists. They all knew. Their expressions told me they had known for a while. She finally took one small step forward. Her mouth opened, then closed again. When the words came, they landed flat in the quiet room. I didn't raise my voice. I simply looked around at the decorations I had chosen, the tables I had arranged, the entire setup I had spent weeks perfecting for a night that was never meant to include me. Then I asked the only thing that still mattered. The question hung in the air between us. She didn't answer. Instead, she glanced briefly at the guy beside her, then back at me. Her shoulders stayed relaxed. No panic, no tears. Just the calm calculation of someone who had already rehearsed this moment. The group remained perfectly still, drinks still in their hands, waiting to see what would happen next. I stood there under the lights I had paid for and realized the kindness they claimed to protect me with was the final cut. They had let me build the stage so they could watch the performance from the front row. She never gave me the length of time, but as I turned to leave at 23:12, one detail stayed burned behind my eyes. The way every person in that room avoided looking at each other once I asked. They were hiding something even bigger than the affair, and I still didn't know what it was. I left. No final words. No raised voice. I simply turned at 23:14 and walked back through the same entrance I had helped set up that afternoon. The string lights I had hung glowed softly above me as the door closed behind my back. For a few seconds, the room stayed quiet. Then slowly, the conversation picked up again. Low at first, then louder. Laughter returned in careful layers. The party continued as if the interruption had never happened. I kept walking down the street without looking back. By 23:40 my phone had already gone still. No calls. No messages asking where I went. The group chat remained silent. The next morning it stayed that way. No one reached out. No one checked if I was okay. The days that followed moved with unnatural speed. Texts from people I had known for years dried up completely. Plans that once included me simply vanished from calendars. Inside jokes continued without explanation. The circle closed neatly around the new pair, leaving a clean space where I used to stand. They moved on too easily, too cleanly. By the end of the week, it felt as though they had already practiced this version of their lives weeks earlier. The transitions were smooth, the excuses ready. The new normal settled in without resistance. I sat in the apartment at 1:20 on Saturday night, staring at the empty notification screen. Everything had been prepared long before I walked into that room. The only thing they hadn't rehearsed was what would happen if I started looking deeper into the months leading up to that night. And I was just beginning. What stayed with me wasn't just the betrayal. It was how organized it all was. How many people participated in it. How long I had been the only one not knowing the truth in a story I was actively helping build. Sometimes the hardest part isn't being replaced. It's realizing you were the last one to be told you already were.